Joining me now is Dave Gabez. He's a former federal officer and military guy. We gave him an honorarium and asked David to go down to Texas and look around with his years and years of expertise related to investigations and related to Islam, related to law enforcement. Tell us what is really going down there at these mosques. And we're talking Plano, too, the mosque of Dr. Yaser Cotti and Epic. We asked him to do that. He joins us tonight after a lengthy report. David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Brandon.
So, David, how long were you down there?
I was in Texas from 1 through 4 May, and actually at the Epic Center from 2 and 3 May 2025.
Okay, so let's start with Epic. What did you find there? I know they're building a 402-acre compound. How much is built? Do they have the mosque? Were you able to go into the mosque? And if so, what'd you find?
Yeah, the mosque is complete, and then they have numerous houses. The majority of the project is complete already. There were many houses that actually still under construction, but I was able to go into the mosque on 2 and 3 May 2025 and spent several hours in there. And
what did you find when you went in?
Well, it's almost, I can give an analogy using the DEI and stuff that's being taught in some schools on transgender and the type materials. This is pretty much a fake Disneyland type mosque is how I can best describe it. They have an outward appearance of being, big, open, clean, and abiding by the standards of society in America. For instance, allowing women to come in the front door of the mosque and to congregate inside the main lobby of the mosque. You normally don't see that in a mosque. They normally go to the back of the mosque or in a basement, or if they're even allowed to go to the mosque. So it's really a show to make look like they're trying to fit in with American standards. But behind the scenes, this mosque is a 100% Salafist, Wahhabi, school of thought, Hanbali type mosque, one of the most dangerous type mosque and ideologies within Islam. And I found the materials to back that up. And going back to the analogy, like a school that is teaching DEI and giving first and second graders books on transgenders and homosexuality, they may say, a school, for instance, may say that they've dropped the DEI, they're no longer giving the young children those type books, but then in the library they have hundreds and hundreds of those books that the children are able to access, immediately. The same thing in this mosque. They're trying to say that they're not Salafist, they're not Wahhabi, they are very moderate. But then when you go into mosque, the materials that are readily available for all the worshipers, to include the young children, are very, very hardcore Wahhabi, Salafist materials, just like Al-Qaeda would use, ISIS would use, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, etc.
So let me show on the screen one of the covers. Jihad in the Quran and Sunnah, is that what it says? Sunnah?
Yes.
So where did you find that book?
That book, well, they had books like this in the actual mosque, and then they referred me to a particular bookstore in Dallas, Texas, to go to get more material, and I got this from the bookstore they recommended me to go to.
And what is taught in this book?
Well, I'll give you a good example, because being a former federal agent, I only use evidence current, like 2025. I don't want to go back pulling stuff directly out of the Quran 1,400 plus years ago. So the materials that they give to the worshipers in a mosque break down the various categories within the hadith, the sayings and doings of Prophet Muhammad. For instance, on divorce or marriage or jihad, they have small 20, 25-page booklets that explains to the Muslim people how to interpret the Quran and the Hadith of Muhammad. And for instance, on jihad, when they talk about, I'll read you an example of what they have in this one. When it talks about jihad, to show you that they're not talking about 1,400 plus years ago, but how Muslims should interpret it right now today. For instance, quote, the Muslims were ordered to take all precautions against the enemies of Allah and to get ready against them with all they can of power, because that is the first step for jihad, fighting, and the supreme way for the defense. To get ready for jihad includes various kinds of preparations and weapons, tanks, missiles, artillery, airplanes, naval ships, and the training of the soldiers of these weapons are all included under the meaning of jihad.
So that you're saying that is what's in that book?
Yes.
That they recommended to you in Yaser Cotti's mosque to go buy.
Exactly, and also in the mosque they have the same thing.
And by the way, you have this on a lot of this on recording, right?
Yes, I do. I took a lot of recordings, got a lot of audio, and I've got a lot of pictures. This very book is actually in the mosque, but some of the material inside the prayer room you're not able to take out. They did give me some books, but then they referred me if I wanted to get copies of this material to go down to a certain bookstore.
Now, when you were talking to them, who did they think you were?
They thought I was a practicing Muslim for a couple years and that I was planning on moving to Plano and moving into one of their homes on the 400-acre compound.
So they thought you were an American Caucasian convert to Islam.
Exactly.
How hard was it to convince them of that fact?
Not hard at all. As long as you comply with Sharia adherence, the manner of dress, how you perform the wudu, the cleansing of the body inside the prayer area, and your mannerisms. And then I am an Arabic linguist, although you did not have to speak Arabic.
So you can speak Arabic fluently?
The State Department says I can. I don't feel confident as much as the State Department did.
Wow. So as you talked to them over the course of how many days?
2 days.
2 days.
Plus, I've had correspondence since I've returned. I got a couple contacts at the mosque, and they're answering some questions for me on various aspects of Sharia law.
And you've provided us with an affidavit of all this, correct?
Yes, you have the final affidavit here, and probably today, tomorrow at the latest. I've got the rough draft.
Mm-hmm. And will there be more pictures coming?
Yes, I've got numerous pictures to send you.
You've sent me some. I can send those over to Logan in the control room right now, right?
Yes.
Logan, check my email under Dave's name and see if you can pull up a few pictures. I think he already has some. He sent me by email. So based on what you learned at Epic, would you call Yaser Cotti himself a jihadist? And by that, define jihad for the average person who thinks that means you go out. There are different kinds of jihad. So explain that.
The Muslims try to give you two different types of jihad. In essence, there's one true jihad, and that's jihad qatal, which means fighting. And that's what they teach in the mosque. Now, there is another form of jihad that they use in their PR media type, where they say it's an inner struggle that a Muslim has with just various aspects of life that may be going on, like if your children are involved in narcotics or whatnot, that you've got an internal struggle, which is jihad. But the only type of jihad that is taught in a mosque is jihad, the physical fighting, as I just read. And they don't talk about just the bows and arrows that you used 1,400 years ago. As this book that I got explains, they talk about upgrading the weapons to have the best possible weapons that you can to meet your enemy, to have the same type of tanks, missiles, explosives that your enemy may have.
What more did you learn about Yaser Cotti while you were there?
Well, he's got an office as soon as you go into the mosque, and he is their resident scholar, is what is on his door, resident scholar. He's 50 years old, from Pakistan. He studied university in Saudi Arabia and also at Yale. And he tries to somehow distance himself from being a Salafist, Wahhabi type individual.
And by the way, why is that so important for him to distance himself?
Because as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, it's more of a show type mosque to try to fit in with the community, local politicians.
But the Salafi Wahhabism, is that on the scale of jihad 1 to 10? Where are we at?
You're at a 10 with Wahhabi. That's Saudi Arabia. They believe in the literal interpretation of the Quran and Hadith. Hadith is the sayings and doings of Prophet Muhammad. Anything Muhammad said or did, they take a literal translation of that and they interpret it that way.
Okay, so he tries to downplay that. Where is this mosque at when it comes to, say, promoting any books or literature on child marriage?
Same way. And the various manuals that they had at the mosque, Tafsir, Ibn Kathir, Sahih Muslim, Bukhari, Riyadh al-Saleen, just for example, those are extensive manuals on the Hadith, and they have those in the mosque. And child marriage is anything that Muhammad did, for instance, marrying Aisha when she was 6 years old, is meant for the Wahhabi-style Muslim that it is okay. If Muhammad did it 1,400 years ago, then it's okay in 2025. And they have the manuals to back that up. So
this is just coming to my mind right now. I don't know why I have not thought about this earlier. This just came to my mind while you were talking. Tell me what you think about what just raced through my mind. And that is, as we were talking about a religious group, so-called extremism, child marriage, the safety of children, what's being encouraged. Why did our government have such concern about David Koresh at Waco? In other words, the so-called extremism of David Koresh, and I didn't agree with his religious views, but the so-called extremism of David Koresh, their concern of the welfare of children, all the things that were going on. Couldn't you take those same concerns that the federal government said they had about David Koresh and the folks there at the Waco compound? Couldn't you put those same questions and concerns onto this mosque?
You could, Brandon, and you're 100% correct. I'll give you the big difference between Waco and Islamic mosque and the activity going on inside America. Waco had a few $100s. The mosque in Plano, Texas, and Islam in general in America, they have billions of dollars supported by Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. So you're talking billions of dollars plus a few $100s. It's much easier to go after someone with a few $100s versus billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. So the government thought they needed to use tanks, special forces, SWAT teams to take down a compound of religious folks under all kinds of questionable, all kinds of questions they had about the safety of the kids, where I think they were sending in a social service worker who said, there's nothing going on there. These kids are fine. I think there were several people saying, don't do this. This is not necessary. Of course, you could apprehend him while he was out for his morning jog. David had a band, and they were going to honky tonks and bars or whatever and playing and making side money. They could have snatched him up then off the compound grounds. But everything that we saw for days and days and days was over this little group out in Waco. And yet, if that's the standard for raiding and taking a group down, then why do they not take down these mosques in America?
They should be taking down the mosque in America. And I'll give a good example of when I talk with some of the local sheriffs in the communities. I go in and I tell them, Sheriff, I've got evidence that a particular Baptist church are engaged in child marriages, that they are advocating for slavery, and they got the manuals and the books encouraging the worshipers in this Baptist church to marry young children. Almost immediately, the sheriff says, "Give me that evidence, and I'll have a SWAT team down there within 2 hours." And then I say, "Well, let me tell you in actuality what the truth is. I've got evidence of a mosque in your city that is advocating child marriages. I've got proof of child marriages, and where they're advocating killing Christian Jews in your community. Now will you do the same thing, send your SWAT team into the mosque?" And then it's a total 180. They say no because it's their culture. This is Islam. I would be going up against 50 million people in America, and the liberals, the left, and they stay away from it. And actually, the FBI and other federal agencies protect most of these mosques, because if there is a such thing going on in a mosque in a city, the local sheriff or the police department can actually not go into that mosque without first coordinating with the task force of the FBI and get approval, because it really requires approval through the FBI. And even if the local level of the FBI were to approve such an action, they forward everything to headquarters FBI, and it would be shut down, as it has many times when I went to various cities with evidence about child marriages.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to Yaser Cotti. What more? I mean, I've been tracking. I want to go to Worldview Tube. Logan, help me out here too as well. Let's go to Worldview Tube. Put in Yaser Cotti. I want to try to track down what year I first started reporting on this guy, because I just for giggles. Let's see what pops up. Spell his last name for me, David. Cotti.
I think Quadhi.
Quadhi. I think that's right. Okay, what'd you find, Logan? Let's see what year I started talking about Yaser. I want to say somewhere between 2010 and 2013 is what I want to say. Let's see here. Here's one from, we know that's 2017. See how far back you can find. The reason I bring that up, folks, is this is a guy that had a mosque down the road. Now he's gone on to Plano, Texas. Here's one 2010. Here we go. Here's 2010. All right, let me bring this up. Here it is, right here. And you guys can see the date, August 11th, 2010. And there he is, Sheikh Yaser Cotti, right there. Okay? So I started talking about this guy the first time he pops up in our Worldview Tube library is 2010. Then I really started studying him more and more. And then 2017, because he did this interfaith dialogue with James White. So we tried warning about this guy, that I think he was banned from going into parts of Europe. Was he not?
My understanding, he was. And something important about Yaser Cotti is that during my research, he has very close ties with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and he has very close ties with the man I've called the most dangerous Muslim in America, which is Siraj Wahhaj out of Brooklyn, New York. He has a very close relationship with Wahhaj, and when you put the two and two together, all the material at the mosque, his close ties with CARE, Muslim Brotherhood, with Wahhaj, the most dangerous Muslim in America, you've got a very, very dangerous person who's involved in a sleeper cell type activity is what I call that mosque. That is a 3,000 plus person mosque, and it is just a huge sleeper cell. The majority of people there that I encountered were from Pakistan.
In 2010, I reported that Sheikh Yaser Cotti gave a speech in 2001, referred to the Holocaust as false propaganda. It has also been discovered that Yaser Cotti's institute has on its list of alumni the underwear bomber, Umar Faraq, however you say his name, Abdullah Mutala, and reportedly includes terrorist Daniel Madlanado, Madlanado, also known as Daniel, however you say that. I don't have no idea how to say that. But these are things I was reporting on this guy back in 2010. Little did I ever think that a so-called evangelical Christian apologist by the name of James White, who I understand is close friend, is Phil Johnson, executive director of John MacArthur's Grace to You, would come to our backyard and do an interfaith dialogue with this guy in 2017 that we've talked about to the point I'm sick of talking about it. But we told you so. And when we played the hour and did 4 one-hour shows with Usama Dakdok and Sharam hating on this guy, who did we get attacked by? Yaser Cotti? No. The Muslims? Not really. We got attacked by John MacArthur's executive director of Grace to You with all kinds of lies and slander and other, I think, what are just horrific things, including they doxed where I live, and one of their people at Grace to You doxed where I go to church. So I had to stop going to...
You hit on it exactly right there, Brandon. And going back to your question on Waco, that is the big difference. You talking about a Muslim and having facts on hand as you do, you're going to be targeted by not necessarily Muslims, but you're going to be targeted by the 70 million people on the left who will go after you before they will Islamic terrorists.
That's right.
Same as they're doing out of Mexico with some of these, and El Salvador with these gang members. The left will support them before they will you.
Yeah, and these guys that went after me are supposedly unleashing the truth of God's word one verse at a time, which, by the way, tells you that's a theological cult. If you need John MacArthur to unleash the truth of God's word, then he's playing the role of the Holy Spirit, and that's blasphemy. And it blows my mind that Christians don't understand that. So a blasphemous statement with a false teacher who teaches works by combining justification and sanctification, that's what he does. Hyper-Calvinism, and there's a lot of similarities between Calvinism and Islam. We've done full shows on that. These people on the Bible so-called right attacked me and Usama and Sharam for warning about Yaser Cotti. And the point I'm making is that now all of those Calvinist, hyper-Calvinist, neo-Calvinist, John MacArthur people, they've all been impotent in Texas. I blame Phil Johnson, John MacArthur, James White, Justin Peters, who's on video saying Islam is not a threat to the church.
Wow.
Yeah, we have him on video. See if you can find that, Logan. Justin Peters saying Islam is not a threat to the church. It's on my website. I think they should build a mosque and name it the James White, John MacArthur, Justin Peters, Phil Johnson Mosque. Because in my opinion, so-called evangelical Christians and those on the left are the ones helping build these mosques. What say you, David?
I agree. And going to what you were talking about, interfaith dialogue, that is one of the major tools that Islamic scholars use. It is a plan out of Saudi Arabia originally in order for the local Islamic leaders, say in Plano, to go out, conduct interfaith with Christian leaders throughout their area. And many imams have told me, once we get a pastor, a minister, a priest under our control where they start talking about Islam as being peaceful, loving, then they're not concerned about the 1,000 Christians who go to that particular church because they know that the minister or priest will keep their own people in line and they will support Islam before they will even Christianity.
Yep. Here's Justin Peters, John MacArthur and Phil Johnson and James White's buddy. Watch this.
Islam does not pose a threat to the church. My sheep hear me. My sheep hear my voice. I know my sheep. My sheep know me. I know my sheep. They will not follow another. They will not follow the voice of a stranger. Read John chapter 10, all throughout John chapter 10. There is not going to be, this possibility, this scenario will never happen.
All right, stop it there. You heard him say it. Play the first part again. Islam is what? Play that again.
Does not pose a threat. Islam does not pose a threat to the church.
Islam does not pose a threat to the church. True or false, David?
That is so false. That is the biggest lie that the Christian leaders are given to their own sheep, their worshipers. Islam is the number one threat, not only in America, but to the world. And that's based on my 45-plus years of researching Islam, living throughout several Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, etc., Jordan, over the 45 years. Islam is a threat. It's not only a threat to America alone, it's a major threat to our churches. It is a major threat to our children and to the Muslim children. I consider all children to be innocent. And some of the most vulnerable children in the world are the 6- and 7-year-old little girls who are targeted by 50-plus-year-old men who have advocated by Yaser and others for grown men to marry these young, innocent girls.
Well, I'm not a fan of Kenneth Copeland or Benny Hinn, these people, but Justin Peters and that crowd, John MacArthur, they go after those guys all day long. But here they were defending James White in an interfaith dialogue with Yaser Cotti, whose mosque you just went to, who brought into the mosque down the street from our studio when he was here, right down the street, and now is in Plano. In both places, he brought in Siraj Wahhaj, the unindicted co-conspirator in the bombing of the World Trade Center. Last I checked, Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland weren't running terrorist cells or calling for jihad with the knife or unindicted co-conspirators, yet Justin Peters says Islam is not a threat to the church. And when we asked John MacArthur, who I'd been emailing with for a while and who'd spoken for me, and I interviewed him twice, to get your boys under control, and even then when they wouldn't, I requested a meeting with their elders. They sent me a letter saying, you're not a member of our church. Matthew 18 doesn't apply. Don't call us again. I say they should build a mosque. They should put a big plaque thanking John MacArthur, Phil Johnson, James White, and Justin Peters for advancing Islam in Texas, because that's what I think they've done. Do you think that's a fair statement, or is that over the top, David?
No, I think it's a fair statement. And something I want to say about Siraj Wahhaj, so your listeners will understand how dangerous he is. And in the context of 2025, with the left supporting terrorists like out of El Salvador, the MS-13, etc., Wahhaj, I've got an audio tape of Wahhaj telling his worshipers at the mosque to go out, gather all the gang members, the Bloods, the Crips, MS-13, bring them into the mosque, teach them Islam, and then send them back out onto the streets with Uzis in support of Islam. And you're seeing that in 2025 right now. Mosques are safe havens for gang members, illegal immigrants, and I've encountered that all across the U.S., and now the left is embracing exactly what Islam is advocating.
So Dave Gobbets went down there. We gave him an honorarium to cover his time and travel to investigate. You're hearing it tonight for the first time exclusively right here on Worldview Tube. David is giving us a signed affidavit to testify to the validity of his report. And we're going to be getting more pictures and information. We'll be bringing you another follow-up report with David very soon. David, when you inquired about moving there as a convert to Islam, and you can speak Arabic, and you know, of course, you know the Quran and the Hadiths, what was the requirement for you to buy a house to live in the compound?
I talked to two individuals. The more senior individual, I had talked to him and told him that I was interested in buying a home on the compound. That was no problem, absolutely no problem, because I was Muslim. Then I told him about some of my family members who may move down to Texas with me, my sister, brother, etc., and they may be interested in buying a home too. And then I was told once they accept Islam, then they could buy a home.
So this would be against the Federal Fair Housing Act of, I think, 1968, correct?
Yes, it would be, and I think they're already being investigated for that.
Although I don't expect Greg Abbott to do a lot. We think he's captured. I had Michael Yon on my broadcast on radio today. He says that Greg Abbott is over a police division, like a state, Homeland Security division, and they are not. They are refusing to arrest the illegal invaders in Texas and deport them. Greg Abbott appears to be a World Economic Forum guy. It looks as though Texas, at the highest levels, is completely compromised by Islam. What do you make of those statements today on my radio show by Michael Yon, who's in Texas investigating this right now that I interviewed?
I would say he's correct. I mean, I lived in Texas in the Dallas area for almost 8 years. There are a growing number of mosques. I went to dozens of mosques in Texas. Dallas has just been an influx of mosques in that area. Islam is doing exactly what they said they're going to do. They're going to spread all across the world, especially in America. Their number one enemy aside from Israel. And they are building mosque after mosque after mosque, and they are conducting interfaith with the highest level politicians and Christian leaders in America and Jewish leaders. I've encountered many Jewish leaders that will support Islam before they will Christianity.
I know, isn't that shocking? Very shocking. What did you find out, if you had anything about the politicians, the mayor, where this is all being built?
Well, at this point, not a lot about the local politicians, but they have to have politicians in their hands in the local community if they were even able to initially get off a 400-acre compound. You've got to have politicians who have supported it. Now there's some, backlash going on because there are a number of investigations. But in the end, I don't think that a lot will be done. Islam will win. As many imams have told me over the years, I asked them, why hasn't there been another such 9/11 attack in America? They say, Dave, they call me Dave. They say, Dave, we are winning, meaning Islam is winning in America, and there's no need for another 9/11 such attack as long as they're winning, because it would only set them back 25-plus years.
David, what else did you discover? If we move on to whatever else you looked at while you're in Dallas. Well, let me ask you this. How many houses have they already built around this mosque?
There looks to be at least 100-plus houses that I've seen. I drove up and down the streets.
Is it gated? No,
it's not. It's not gated. Now, they do have the protection of the Plano Criminal Justice Center that they basically surrounded with their houses. You got the police department that is surrounded by these homes. And no, it's not gated. Anyone can drive up and down the street, but they do have a lot of security there, armed security.
Wait a minute. Who has armed security?
The Islamic Center.
They do. Logan, do we have the videos, pictures of that police facility? This is the one, Epic, is where they can literally look on top of the police and the training and the police center and everything right there, and the SWAT team and everything.
And I've got pictures of that for you also.
Okay. And Logan, I think we played that a few weeks ago from a guy that, was he retired police officer? Did you hear him testifying, David? I
did hear what he testified about. And when I'm talking armed, I've never seen in a mosque where you've got security who have weapons on their side in the prayer room.
Why do you think they're doing that? Because of all the publicity or what?
I think they're doing it as a show of force, too, that intimidation is Islam. And I think it's for anybody like me, they want to intimidate from doing this type of work that I do, which I'm not intimidated by it.
So you're saying they've now got over 100 houses. What would an average house in there cost right now?
From the area that I was at, right next to the mosque, I was told they were between 1 and 1.5 plus million each home. These homes, I'm just estimating, look to be 6 to 8 bedroom type homes. Woo. They are large.
Is that because they have a lot of children, or they have 2 or 3 wives with children?
I would think it's because they got multiple wives with various children. But they've got large families. A lot of money is in this area. You've got to have a lot of money to live in that area. To live in Plano itself is one of the most richest areas in Texas. You have to have a lot of money. But to live on this compound, you have to have even more money.
So you've got to have $1 million to $1.5 million to buy a house there. Easy. To buy. Okay. So,
and they make it easy for you to do it. I was approached by at least 2 different banks inside the mosque when I was getting ready to go to the prayer, that they gave me their business cards, and they said they had Sharia financing if I wanted to buy a home in the compound.
Tell our audience what that means.
Well, it means essentially no interest type financing, and it's backed. The Islamic community backs a lot of these loans. Saudi Arabia, the governments back a lot of these loans. And they just make it easier for Muslims to get a loan than it would be for a non-Muslim. A non-Muslim would not be able to get a Sharia-backed financing loan.
And what was your interest rate?
There is no interest.
So you can get an interest-free loan?
Yes. Now, the payments are sometimes higher, but not necessarily, because they may stretch it out even more years than they would a typical mortgage.
So they make it easy to buy a home, clearly.
They make it much easier for a Muslim to buy a home inside America.
What about the dues? What are your HOA dues?
What about the Jews?
No, dues. HOA, Homeowners Association.
I did not encounter any HOA. I didn't get any information that they have HOA dues.
What about schools? Will there be schools on the compound?
There is a school in the mosque. I think it went up to the 8th grade, this particular school inside the mosque.
So already 100 homes. Were there homes being built?
There was many under construction also.
Was construction halted, or did you see people building?
I have read reports that some of the construction has been halted on the compound, but from what I saw maintenance crews out in this area doing construction, so it wasn't halting all construction.
Anything you want to tell us about this before we move on to where else you visited?
Well, I would say this mosque is dangerous for the children because they do have a school there from like kindergarten through 8th grade, and they conduct numerous lectures for children and adults on Saturdays and Sundays, which I went to a couple of those, and it's just very, very dangerous. They're advocating for an Islamic Ummah worldwide to include America and to be under Sharia law.
What were they saying about the Jews and the Christians in there? Did your literature, anything?
Oh, yeah. The literature, especially on the Tafsir Ibn Kathir, which is several manuals on the Hadith, talks about killing Christians and Jews anywhere you encounter them, to include inside America.
Do you think anything will be done about this, or is this all just political talk?
I actually don't think that anything is going to be done to stop the spread of Islam in America. And again, as with many of your listeners, I support President Trump 100%. I think he's doing an outstanding job throughout the world. The one area I would say he's neglecting is the spread of Islam, the number one threat to America, inside of America. I don't know what the reasoning at this point would be, but there's not a lot of emphasis being on stopping the spread of Islam in America, to include the terrorist organizations operating in America. CARE, which has been shown even in court to be a part of the Muslim Brotherhood, supports Hamas. They could be taken down under the nonprofit organization status with the IRS. They could be taken down within 5 minutes. But that is not even being done. There's so much evidence against CARE and other such groups, and even this mosque in Plano, that their nonprofit status could be taken away, which would literally shut them down, but it's not being done.
Where else did you visit?
I went to 3 of the Islamic bookstores in Plano and Dallas that was recommended to me to go to, and they have they're not Shia bookstores. They are solid Wahhabi Salafis Islamic bookstores with tons of material for the children and adults.
Who's funding this? Saudi Arabia?
Much of the money comes from Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's been shown throughout the U.S. with the mosque and many of the facilities, businesses. They get a lot of backing from Saudi Arabia.
Now,
and it's important for people to know, Brandon, like the term Islamophobe was due to millions of dollars put out by Saudi Arabia into our universities to teach the term Islamophobe and to use it as an intimidation tool against non-Muslims.
Now, President Trump has been in Saudi Arabia Tuesday, and I guess we're led to believe they've moderated under the prince. What we're talking about now compared to what we saw and heard, I would think this kind of confuses Americans a little bit, right?
It does, and it goes back to my first point that I made about this mosque. It is a fake Disneyland-type mosque where they're trying to show that they're more moderate, and the same in Saudi Arabia with the leader of Saudi Arabia. He's trying to show that he's not Salafist, not Wahhabi, more moderate. It is false, and it is an intimidation tool, and it is to get the naive political leaders on their side.
Oh, wow. Anything else you should report before we let you go?
No, I think that's it at this point. I'm still in communication with several members of the mosque, and they're emailing me back and forth, so I'll be able to get you that information as well.
All right, we'll have you back because you got some pictures to show us as well, right?
Yes, I've got numerous pictures to send you.
Let us know, and we'll get you back. But for now, folks, exclusive report. We asked him to go down there. We provided him with his travel and honorarium for his time to go and do a firsthand investigation as a former federal agent, military guy, expert on Islam. You heard him say the State Department thinks he's an expert speaker of Arabic. He went down there. He went with just the facts. And that's why he's providing us with an affidavit saying these are the facts. Here's a sworn affidavit. And they are what they are. Now, here's the question, David. Why is Fox News, Newsmax, why do these other groups not do this?
Because there's money, billions of dollars going into news agencies throughout America to include Fox News. And I supported a lot of the work of Fox. I'm not being, so critical. But they do have a lot of influence from Saudi Arabia and a lot of money going into Fox. And they're only going to go to a certain point. They're not going to be critical as I have been. Even if there are facts available, they're not going to use those facts.
So you believe what we've done is a service to the American people tonight with your work?
It's a service to American people, what you're doing, and the extension of what I was able to do. We just need to get the American people to listen and start demanding that their politicians and Christian and Jewish leaders do what they're supposed to be doing.
And what would that be? How should they move forward with this? Close it down? Say we're done? Close it down?
Well, they should be closing it down, and they should be prosecuting these individuals, and they should be putting them on a terror list. CARE should be designated as a terrorist organization. Siraj Wahaj and his people, organization, MANA, M-A-N-A, I think it's Muslims Association of North America, should all be designated, just like the El Salvadorian gangs, they should be designated domestic terrorists.
And the reason why is because, just so the audience knows, why?
Because they're advocating the destruction of Israel and America.
Let's hope this reaches to some high levels. And
I hope so, Brandon.
Yeah, I do too. David, I want to thank you for going down there. I want to thank you for all your years of work, your research. We'll be having you back to show some of the pictures, hopefully before the week is over, for another report. But I want to thank you for your service in our military, your service in the intelligence arena that continues today in your private investigative work. So, David, on behalf of all my audience, thank you for this.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Dave Gobb is checking in. You should get his book, Muslim Mafia, with Paul Sperry. You should all get it. Now, folks, this is, again, a perfect example of how we're different from everybody else. We're not interested in political correctness. We're not interested in trying to appease people so we can get funding from different groups or countries. We're an independent organization. We're a listener-supported network. There's very little that we cannot do if we have the funding. So we just did that. We put some funds toward paying for his travel and lodging and time to go do this work. And understand, folks, this isn't just limited to Texas. This is going on in many, many states across America. Now, if you appreciate what we're doing, this is a network that is supported by you. Projects like what we just did, this exclusive investigation and reporting by Dave Gobbets is exclusive to us because you help us have the resources and have the platform to send him down there and then report the facts with a sworn affidavit. Will you go right now to worldviewfoundation.com and make a contribution? worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there. Some of you would say, I would never want to do what Brandon does. I would never want to do what Dave Gobbets does. I would never want to put myself on their radar, these groups. I have a friend of mine who's retired military, Marine in Vietnam. He says to me often, we pray for you, Brandon, because you guys, you and your team, you guys have skylined yourselves. What he means is you climb up a mountain to take the high place. And when you get up there, the light of the sun or the light of the moon or the light of this moon and the stars, even at night, skylines you. You can see the outline of the individual standing on top of the mountain as a lookout. You're skylined. You're visible. You've revealed yourself. And we're praying for you. Well, that's right, we have. But you know what? That's what I'm called to do. And maybe you're not called to do that. And I'm not going to criticize you because some of you are called to do things I'm not called to do. Some of you are quietly doing things behind the scenes and in ministry that's very off the radar, day in and day out. This is what Christians, particularly speaking of the Christians now, this is what we do. We all have different gifts. We all have different callings, but together collectively, we're a Christian body, what is known as the church, called out ones, ecclesia. We all have different calling in areas. We have one great calling, the Great Commission, evangelism and discipleship, but some of the gift of ministry in teaching, some of the gift of administration, some of the gift of mercy, some have the gift of service. We're all using our gifts. And maybe your gift isn't to do what I do, and my gift isn't to do what you do. But you can support what we're doing and say, I don't want to do what he does. That's not my gift, and I don't want to do that. Some of you may have a wife that wouldn't want you to do this. But we are willing to take a stand and to do these kind of reports, put out programs like we do. But if I don't know I have you guys standing behind us with prayer, as well as your financial support, we can't do any of it. So I appreciate all of you praying for us. I appreciate all of you that are supporting us, because what you just heard in that exclusive report by Dave Gobbets, these kind of things cannot be done without a budget, without the resources. This network can't continue pushing out free programming with $8,000 a month in bandwidth bills to give the program away because so many people are watching and chewing up that bandwidth bill and storage of those files that we have to pay for. So I think we've shown what we're made of. And I need more of you to support us. It blows my mind what some of these so-called conservative or even Christian groups bring in, and they won't take a stand on hardly anything. But they sure raise a lot of money. But they don't take a stand. I guess that's one reason why they do raise a lot of money. They appeal to a big audience that's an inch deep and a mile wide. But when you start talking about Islam and jihad and the Quran and the hadiths, people say, I can't handle this. I don't even know what he's talking about. Well, I get it. That's why the country's in the shape it is. Because we don't have a lot of people like you. We don't have enough people like you that actually think, that actually learn, that want to actually be educated with knowledge, acquisition of truth. So you have wisdom, application of that truth. Most Americans, they'd rather talk about right versus left, Democrats versus Marxist, or Democrats versus Republicans. They'd rather keep it real simple. And so they appeal to a bigger audience probably, because our audience is again, it's amazing, by the way. We used to hold events and we used to have some of the, we called them 1%ers. 1% of the people that would show up would be just nuts. And you could tell by their lack of hygiene, the way they dressed, just cuckoo. And my wife and I noticed over the years, as our conferences became more about hard-hitting topics, those people stopped showing up. You know why? They didn't have the intellectual wherewithal. God bless them. I'm sorry. I don't know if they got too many vaccines when they were kids or what their parents fed them and did to them, but they weren't all there. Some of their elevators did not go all the way to the top. But they would like to come to our conferences when we kept it real simple, because they were simple people. And I'm not being unkind. I'm simply saying, you got to know what I'm talking about here, folks. I mean, way out there. But when we kicked it up and started really taking on hard issues and going deep, those people stopped showing up. And my wife and I, we were just in Milwaukee. And she said that. She said, did you notice out of those 1,000+ people, these were really well put together people in their dress, in their speech, in their attentiveness, in their questions. She said that was an amazing audience of people that were really first class, first rate. She said, did you notice we didn't have the kind of people we would have when we kept it real simple? No. I'm not saying we don't want to reach people down where they're at when they're starting and bring them along. But what I am saying is, if we wanted to reach the most people, we would not go where we're going. We would keep it very shallow, like Fox News does. But that's not what we're looking to do here. We're looking to train leaders in communities, people that are empowered with the truth to share it with one person after another and disciple them in the truth. So if we were about numbers, and the more numbers, maybe the more money, which is why these big groups, some of them bring in millions of dollars, but they're an inch deep and a mile wide, because they can attract a large audience. But as soon as you go deep, you start losing people. Well, I said to my wife years ago, we're not interested in the biggest audience. We're interested in the most educated audience, or an audience that wants to be educated. And when we open up our phone lines, we find out just how educated they are. They know what's going on. Why do you think we attract the caliber of people we do? Because we're not catering to the lowest common denominator. I'm not wasting my time with that. And many of you watching wouldn't tune in if it was an inch deep and a mile wide. But what I'm saying is, by choosing to set our programming at a high level of broadcast reporting, we're limiting how big our audience will be. But we're also training people that actually have the wherewithal to go do something with what we train them in. But that means there's less of us to financially support it. And that's fine. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. We'll be right back after this break.
True beauty isn't applied. it's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.